Hello friends, this is the 11th lecture of our lecture series. In this lecture, we are discussed about the structured of database management system, which is different from three-tier architecture of DBMS. Okay, let's start. Structure of database management system. What is the structure of DBMS, right? The structure of database management system is also referred to as overall system architecture or database architecture, but it is different from the tier architecture of DBMS. I have already told you it is different from tier architecture of DBMS. Okay, but we can also call it as an overall system structure or DBMS architecture, right? In this, there are main three component, that is query processor, storage management manager, and disk storage. Okay, so this is the structure of DBMS, okay, or we can say database architecture. In this, there is a different users like DBA users, application program, all have a different component by which the DBMS will work. Okay, so what is the query processor? Query processor means if we want to communicate with database or we want to store or retrieve the data from the database, we need to understand the queries. Without queries, we can't communicate with data. We can't store the data in the DBMS, okay, or we can't retrieve the data. Data we can't modify. So first we know about the query. Okay, query in terms of SQL, MySQL, or it is depend which type of database you are using. Okay, तो database query processor क्या है? It interpret the request. Request means queries because we are requesting a DBMS in the form of queries. So it interpret the queries which is received from the end user, or we can say an application program, into instructions. Okay, it also execute the user request which is received from the DML compiler, right? It also has a certain component, that is DML compiler, DDL interpreter, embedded DML precompiler, or query optimizer. So DML compiler is, it processes the DML statements into a label instructions so that they can execute it, right? You have already learned about or studied about the compiler and interpreter. Both are used in the programming language, uh, uh, which is used to convert our high level language or a language which is using to communicate with a system into a low level language, or we can say machine level language, because our computer only understands 0 1 format, that is low level or machine level, okay, or binary language. So DML compiler is used to process the DML statement into low level instructions. Okay. DDL interpreter, it is also used to interpret the request. Okay. So it processes the DDL statement into a set of table containing the metadata. As we know, if we record something, right, if we want to record something or we want to store the data of anyone, so we need about the data about data, that is called metadata. Means if we store the data, so it has some size, it has some location, okay, it has some attribute, this is also called a metadata. Just like dictionary, if you have dictionary, you have an index, you have a alphabetical order. So you know, after is uh, spelling, you come to B is spelling, right? आप A के बाद B पे आओगे, B के बाद C पर जाओगे, एंड A वाला जो अल्फाबेट अगर A से लेके बहुत सारी मीनिंग्स है, तो कौन सा किस पेज पर मीनिंग है, दैट इज कॉल्ड द मेटा डेटा. ओके, so which is work on the metadata. Embedded DML precompiler is process DML statement embedded in an application program into a procedure calls. Okay, ये procedures calls में convert करता है. Query optimizer, it execute the instructions generally that is generated by a DML compiler. DML compiler interpret or process the DML statement into low-level language, and what the query optimizer read this instructions and work on it. Okay. Next is Storage Manager. Storage Manager is a program that provides an interface between the data stored in the database and the query received. Storage Manager have a work, ओके, जिसे हम डेटाबेस कंट्रोल सिस्टम भी कहते हैं. इफ आई नीड समथिंग, then I write an query to retrieve the data from the database. So storage manager have a work, or it provide the interface between me and the database by which we can retrieve the data. Okay, just like सिस्टम में क्या होता है, ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम होता है ना. फोन में क्या है, एंड्रॉयड फोन है तो एंड्रॉयड है, iOS फोन है तो iOS है. तो उसमें क्या है कि हमें इंटरफेस प्रोवाइड करता है कि हम किस तरीके से काम करेंगे. तो वही करता है कि डेटा को रिट्रीव करने के लिए आपको अगर कोई हेल्प कर रहा है तो वो स्टोर मैनेजर है, which is also known as database control system. It maintain the consistency and integrity of the database by applying the constant and execute the DCL statements. ठीक है, ये क्या करता है, कंसिस्टेंसी इंटीग्रिटी प्रोवाइड करता है. ठीक है, if any changes occurred which also stored in the database, ताकि कोई कॉन्स्पिरेंसी ना रहे. ठीक है. इट इज रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर अपडेटिंग, स्टोरिंग, डिलीटिंग एंड रिट्रीविंग द डेटा इन द डेटाबेस. ठीक है, हम ये सब करते हैं. जैसे हमने कोई एंट्री डिलीट करी, तो स्टोरेज मैनेजर का काम है कि ये सब डिलीट करने के बाद जो एक्चुअल डेटा है वो आपके पास शो करे. ठीक है, तो ये सब इसका काम होता है. Here are some component of storage manager, that is authorization manager. It ensure role based control system, that is check whether the particular person is privileged to perform the request operation or not. Integrity manager, it check the integrity constant when the database is modified. Transaction manager, it control concurrent access by performing the operation in the scheduled way, that is receives the transaction. Thus it ensures that the database remains in the consistent state before and after the execution of the transaction. These three things we have already discussed in previous lectures. Okay. File manager, it manages the file space and data structures. Okay. Buffer manager, it is responsible for cache memory and the transfer of data between the secondary storage to main storage. Okay. Next is disk storage. It contains the following component, that is data file, which have all the data. Data dictionary, it contains the structure of the database, or we can say it store the metadata. Right? It contains the information about the structure of any database object. It is a repository of information that govern the metadata. Right? Indices, it provide faster retrieval of item. Indices just like aliases. Okay. Right, like my name is Priyanka and I am also known as Priya. So indices is Priya, जिससे कि मुझे ज्यादा मेहनत ना करनी पड़े किसी डेटा को सर्च करने में. राइट. That is all about the presentation, or all about the lecture. If you have any query, do message or do comment in this uh, comment box, or you can also write a mail on my mail id, that is guptapriyanka117@gmail.com. Or you want some more lectures on the DBMS, please do comment. If you have any suggestion, please do email on my mail address. I'm again saying my mail address. My mail address is guptapriyanka117@gmail.com. Thank you.